Hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Fun Fans Podcast. I'm your host, James Dillard. With me, as always, my co-host, Bailey Jackson. How you doing, Bailey?
I'm good. Just thankful for another week.
Another day in paradise. We have a great show today. We have another podcaster with DaFanboys with us. We're going to introduce him in just a second. And we're going to really break down the season a little bit more than what we might normally do, especially the Notre Dame matchup. You'll find out why in just a second. We have two interviews on the show. They're going to be very awesome. And finally, we're going to make sure you're caught up on all other major issues from Clemson campus and the other wide world of sports. But first, the Fun Fans are a proud part of the DaFanboys Fangirls Sports Podcasting Network. If you're a true sports fan, the DaFanboys Fangirls is perfect for you. Find various nationwide podcasts and other sports media at DaFanboys.com and on all forms of social media. The Fun Fans Podcast is the official podcast for Clemson fans.
And don't forget to mention Ruben's Food, Sports, Spirits, and Catering, the best wings around with 2 locations in the upstate, 1083 Batesville Road in Greer, which I went to last weekend, and 11028 Anderson Road in Piedmont. You can find them at RubensC.com, and Rubens is simply a great place to eat for all the sports fans. And they had a live band last Saturday, too.
So, all right, well, I found out that when there's a game, when college football, the bands are going to be outside, at least at the one in Greer, so you can watch the football games on the inside. So I made sure we found out about that. And we'll talk about Diamond Edge products here in a minute as take a sip of my Pepsi product out of my Diamond Edge product cup there. But we want to get straight to it. So today is the first ever Fanboys Fangirls Kickoff Marathon, and we're kicking off season 2. This group got started getting together a year ago and went through football season, and Bailey and I hooked up with them in January. So we started the day at 11 o'clock with Jay, and he had 2 hours of Orange Shades and Coach's Corner podcast. He broadcast from Arden's Grill over in Central South Carolina. Just before us was Harden the Paint. And after our show at 6:15, you can shift to the Fresh Takes podcast. He's on Twitter as the Real Fresh Channel. You can find him on DaFanboys.com. If you go to DaFanboys.com, you can find all these podcasts, and he talks pro sports, probably NFL today with it being the kickoff like to the football season. But we have with us the host of the Golden Homers podcast. So he is a Notre Dame. Look at there. Got your logo for you there. And I've listened to these guys' podcasts, and they do a great job. Obviously talking about Notre Dame, but, people my age, Bailey, you're a little bit older than me, so you're like already 50, but people our age think of we all love Notre Dame because of the history. Clemson fans, I do. Bailey, is that same for you? I mean, Rudy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a national brand, and we get to see them every week. And I mean, it's just something that you grew up kind of, Notre Dame was Notre Dame.
That's right. So these guys do a great job with the podcast. So say that to say that it can interest any football fan, at least if you're seasoned like Bailey and I. But we want to introduce Nathan Urbach to the show, the host of Golden Homers. How you doing today, Nathan?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's going to be should be a good season. I know we were talking a little off air about it, but I enjoy playing Clemson. I know that I'm a little bit younger. I just turned 30 in January, but as I've grown up, Clemson's been a way more prominent football program than I think maybe they were 30 years ago when I was born. And, obviously they've always been a good program, but I think just especially from a national championship perspective, over the last decade plus, they've been one of those banner football teams. And I think Notre Dame's been fortunate enough to essentially call them a rival at this point with the partial membership in the ACC. The 2015 Hurricane game is something that I won't ever forget. I think it was 2015. It might have been 20.
It was.
I think it's 2015, yeah. So, I mean, that was obviously a really good game. You guys, I think, won the national championship that year. And, that was probably one of the better football games of the entire season. And then we've had some back and forth battles. I mean, Notre Dame's probably had the edge when it comes to being at home. And Clemson's had the edge when it comes to, when the game matters the most. You guys beat us in the college football playoff once, and then the ACC championship another time. So they've had some good games.
Well, that ACC championship game, there was a guy named Trevor Lawrence that came back from COVID.
Exactly.
He helped out tremendously.
Yeah. Darn COVID, man.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys do on your podcast.
Yeah. So ironically enough, we actually haven't recorded in probably the last 2 or 3 months. My co-host Mason Plummer and myself just have, especially during baseball season, because of what I do with my career and stuff like that, it's tough to hop on. But we obviously the Golden Homers is a sort of kind of a play on words. You get the Golden Domers aspect of it, but then you also get like we tend to be homers, or at least we kind of just the joking part of the podcast is that we're homers towards Notre Dame, and we're both obviously just really big Notre Dame fans and stuff like that have had been fortunate enough to do some stuff at the covering Notre Dame as well, not just our podcast related. We both worked for Sports Illustrated for about a year, writing stuff with Irish Breakdown. So definitely check them out. They're still there. Brian Driscoll does a really good job with that website. We've been fortunate enough to kind of team up with guys like Tom Loy at 24/7 Sports and become good friends with him. And so every now and then we're privy to some inside info and stuff like that, which is kind of nice that we have to maybe leave off the podcast and stuff like that. But so we tread lightly at times. But no, in general, man, we're 2 Notre Dame football fans, been Notre Dame football fans our whole lives. Me, because I grew, or my family's from Chicago, Catholic from Chicago. So I essentially was born having to like Notre Dame. There wasn't really an option for me. A lot of my the good thing though is a lot of my family members did attend Notre Dame, so I don't really consider myself a quote unquote subway alum like some people are, and and I don't find that disrespectful regardless. I think that there's a national power to it, that maybe some programs aren't privy to, but and then in Mason's perspective, he actually grew up in South Bend, Indiana, essentially in Mishawaka, which is the county right outside of South Bend. So from his perspective, he essentially had to be a Notre Dame fan as well because he grew up so close to campus. So that's kind of a story background behind us. And we actually met through Twitter and have become super close over the last decade or so because of that.
Very cool.
Cool.
So you guys, Notre Dame is already 1-0, went across the pond to take on Navy. Now, this isn't really a question, but isn't that a little biased to take the Fighting Irish to Ireland and play an American military school? I mean, that's like home field advantage,
right?
Thousands of miles away, but looked pretty good yesterday. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's actually the third time they've done it. 2012, ironically enough, when they went to the national championship game and got hammered by Alabama. That was the last time they did it. I forget when the other time was, but I think it was either the early 2000s or late 1990s. I forget exactly. So yeah, it's the third time they've gone across the pond, specifically in Dublin, Ireland, to play Navy. No, I think it's just it's a fun time. I mean, I'm glad they do it at the beginning of the season, partly because it's Navy and partly obviously because you're traveling overseas to do it. Because I'll be honest, as much as I love and respect Navy and the Naval Academy and everything that they do for our country, the Navy in general, I hate playing them middle of the year. And sometimes I hate playing them in general just because of the wrinkle that they bring, the way that they play. It's not always that Notre Dame struggles with Navy per se. I mean, as you see yesterday, they won 42-3. When you look at the majority of the scores against Navy over the last, 35, 40 years and longer than that, for the most part, they do handle Navy pretty easily from a score perspective. But I think there's some wear and tear that kind of leads, sometimes into other games. And they struggle the few weeks after Navy. So I think getting them out of the way early where they can kind of come unscathed with injuries. And then yesterday's perspective, they were able to get some backups in and play a lot of their depth as the game went on because they had a big lead. I think that's going to maybe help them throughout the season so they don't have to focus on them. And then obviously the game plan in general, having to game plan for the triple option, a couple weeks, before you play them and not have to, you don't have to do that, I guess, now the rest of the way, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best case scenario is to play them first.
Yeah,
because both of us are former high school coaches, and we can tell you that anytime you had to go into a week to get ready for the triple option, there's a lot of assignment football, and sometimes kids don't learn that in 3 days of practice. So I was impressed. Sam Hartman, we're very familiar with him. I watched him throw 6 touchdown passes in person last year at Wake Forest against Clemson. He was a roommate with a kid that went to the school I work at. And he's a great guy, and his dad did 2 of my wife's back surgery. So got a little connection there, and he's like a super senior. He's like 6 years in. His first year was 2018 in the ACC, but hey, they look good. It's typical Notre Dame, man. They're big up front. They ran the football, and they only had 4 incompletions. So, good start.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, no, I mean, can't complain. Now, obviously, Notre Dame probably the last couple of years has had some quarterback issues, or at least maybe not having that quarterback that's going to get you over the top. And I think this year, regardless if they go to the playoff or not, this is the type of quarterback that you need to give you that opportunity. So if they don't make it this year, it's not going to be on the quarterback, I guess is what I'm really getting at.
Yeah, I've seen him take some shots and pop right back up. And he's a great guy. Everybody that I've talked to that has ever met him said he's who you want in your locker room. So good for him. He had a great career at Wake Forest for sure. So what do you know about Clemson this year? You have any outlook on the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is the linebacker play. Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter are 2 of the best in the country. I always say that Notre Dame's J.D. Bertrand would start on maybe every team in the entire country at linebacker besides Clemson. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I know Clemson's linebackers a little bit more than some other programs. So it's a little bit hyperbole to say that, but I'm a huge J.D. Bertrand guy, and I don't think he would start for you guys. And I think that's a testament to what you guys have there. And then obviously Clemson always has dominant guys up front. I can't necessarily name all the guys that they have this year. I know you guys lost some guys to the draft this past season. But one of the things I always look forward to Clemson is the in the trenches, Notre Dame's offensive line versus Notre Dame's defensive line. And then, outside of that, I was kind of talking a little off air about this before you hopped on, Bailey, but I'm a huge fan of Cade Klubnik. I covered his recruitment a little bit before he actually had a Clemson offer, and into him having a Clemson offer. And I know last year, obviously, he played very sparingly in that Notre Dame game, and it wasn't really necessarily a fair shake for a kid like that as a true freshman in that environment and coming in when it's already sort of a weird game going on. But I think he is going to up your quarterback room pretty significantly. And, there might be some bumps and bruises along the way for you guys. I mean, that's going to happen when you have someone that is young, that doesn't have a whole lot of experience per se. But I think in the long run, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to have a Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence level career, because I think those are some tough accolades to follow. But I think he's going to be a damn good quarterback for you guys when it's all said and done. So, yeah, those are kind of my early impressions. And then at least from the Notre Dame Clemson perspective, I mean, playing on the road, it's going to be a tough game.
I'm sorry. It's like Peter Woods. Remember that name as a defensive lineman, true freshman.
Yeah, former 5-star kid, right?
Yes, but I'll say this. Notre Dame up front, that's just, if I were a head football coach, I want an offensive line that looks like that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That's what I want.
To talk more specifically about the matchup. So we play, and we were talking about this earlier as well. It's November before we play. Each team is going to have 7 or 8 games between the time we meet each other. Where do we all think each team will be as far as record, let's say, when the matchup happens? I know Clemson has Florida State, NC State, a couple other conference games.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has Southern Cal, I believe, before us.
Ohio State.
Yep.
Yeah.
So both teams have to play at NC State. And I know NC State's not a national championship powerhouse and that kind of thing, but that is a ridiculously tough place to play.
Yeah.
And it's a place I'll never go back to again as a fan, because they are, I'll use the word passionate on here.
Yeah, we'll say passionate.
I won't say ugly. Did I say that? And honestly, I circled at Syracuse for Clemson. Always struggle at Syracuse for some reason.
Don't understand it.
So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, outside of even just the Ohio State and USC games, which is obviously two top 10 opponents or preseason top 10 opponents right there. You mentioned at NC State. Notre Dame has to go at Duke, who I think has a good football program right now, at Louisville, who's kind of back on the rise a little bit as well. I'm not as nervous for the Louisville game. I'm not really concerned about playing in that environment, and I think Notre Dame's going to probably do well there. But I have a lot of respect for Mike Elko at Duke. He was the former Notre Dame defensive coordinator before going to Texas A&M, and then obviously now getting the job at Duke last year. And then, NC State, I know it's a different football team, but, they've kind of always had Sam Hartman's number. And I think that's something to maybe keep in mind. I'm sure he has some nightmares about some of his matchups against NC State, and hopefully those don't follow him to South Bend. But yeah, no, I mean, I keep saying it, at least from Notre Dame's perspective, you have the big three that everybody talks about, but I don't think this schedule is any sort of cupcake, even aside those three teams. So It's going to be a good one.
So none of us are going to go out on a limb and say both teams will be undefeated when they meet. None of that stuff.
I'll go as far to say that I'd be pretty surprised if Notre Dame is undefeated.
It wouldn't surprise me if each team has a loss. I'm going to make a prediction. I think the winner of the Notre Dame Southern Cal game makes the playoffs. Win that game, the winner makes the playoffs. I'm just going to. There's only been one game on the field. Hadn't seen Southern Cal play this year. We're talking about that earlier as well. But with the way the schedules are, Notre Dame, if they win that game, I think they're setting themselves up for postseason.
Well, they played yesterday too, I think.
USC played yesterday too.
Put up about 60. But hey, it's in November. Hopefully, it won't be 100 degrees like it is now.
And no hurricanes.
The great state of South Carolina, because it's brutal. I can't imagine going to a game yesterday here. It would have been miserable. But November 4th is normally pretty nice weather. Maybe that's chilly at the tailgate, James.
A little chilly. Yeah. Nathan, you coming down for the game?
I've been kicking around the idea. I don't know. Like, this year's so weird because Notre Dame plays in week 0 that they play like 6 games or 5 games before the end of September. And that's obviously in the heart of baseball season. So that's tough for me. So everything I'm going to is going to be either October or November. So we'll see. I'm trying to make it to Notre Dame at least once. And if I go to a road game, why wouldn't it be Clemson, right?
There you go. Got an invitation to the tailgate now.
We'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there for sure.
I have some friends out in the Greenville area, so hopefully I can maybe make it out.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, but speaking of the important stuff like tailgating, tell us what it's like. Obviously, tell us what the tailgating. We should have been to Notre Dame by now, Bailey.
Yeah.
I mean, I've wanted and tried to go every time Clemson's gone up there. It just hadn't worked out. But Nathan, what's the tailgating like at Notre Dame?
Well, actually, it's funny you asked that because I was actually at the Notre Dame Clemson game last year. That was the one big game I got to go to in South Bend. And, it's weird, man. You guys maybe aren't included in this, but I think Notre Dame gets a lot of crap sometimes for being, like this high academic, non-party, like they don't have good looking girls, that kind of stuff type of school. And, from someone who has grown up going to a lot of Notre Dame games in South Bend and going to a lot of, big games like the Clemson one last year and different things like that. Those boys down there and those people up in South Bend, they know how to tailgate as good as anybody. The one thing I'll say is, and maybe this is a little biased, I think that they tend to be a little bit more welcoming. You're not gonna be walking. If you're a Clemson fan and you have your own, tailgate area, you're not going to be catching a lot of crap or anything like that from people. Every fan base has their guys and, and fans that will do that. But for the most part, I think Notre Dame is very welcoming to the opposing fan base. But they know how to get down with their tailgates. I mean, there's not a spot that's going to be open. It's going to be a crazy crowd. They definitely know how to handle their tailgates for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, very good. And like you say, every every fan base has very welcoming fans. Normally 85-90% of the fans.
Sure,
It's unfortunate that the smaller percentage of folks kind of ruin it for everybody. Speaking of that, this is a little bit off script. But I thought about this earlier. Our rival, obviously, in-state, we got the Gamecocks, and that's the rival. The way Notre Dame and the history and how they play their schedule, and I know it's a little different. You mentioned Clemson becoming kind of a rival, but who is like the real rival? Who is the team like if you guys lose, but not even to them? Like we could lose to you guys and the Gamecock fans talk trash.
Yeah.
So who's the team, the fan base that talks trash when you guys get beat by not them?
Yeah, so it's weird. I would say from a fan base perspective, it's probably Michigan. But like Notre Dame's biggest rival is USC, like 100%. It's definitely USC. The difference is that they're so far away from each other that you don't hear it a lot. And at least this is just from my perspective. And I grew up in Las Vegas, still live here right now. So I see a little bit more of the USC fans than maybe the normal Notre Dame fan does. But I haven't really come across a lot of USC fans, even on Twitter and social media, which is where you get a lot of the people that, will say things. But there's a lot of Michigan fans on there. And, obviously it's not as big as Michigan, Ohio State, but it's probably number 2, right, bare minimum from a fan base perspective. And, there's the Midwest rivalry there. They have a lot of recruiting battles against each other. And then obviously they played each other for 45, 50 plus years in a row. So I would say that's probably the one, specifically from a fan base to a fan base. When something goes wrong, when there's a recruiting battle lost, you're going to hear it both ways. When there's when Notre Dame lost to Marshall last year, you're going to hear it from the Michigan fans. Like it's, and then vice versa. When Michigan lost to Appalachian State a decade ago or whatever, Notre Dame fans were probably chirping in their ears, and they probably still do, honestly. So I would say that's the one for sure.
I remember that. It must be a Big Ten thing, because we catch it from Ohio State. Like we have anything to do with Ohio State until the playoffs or something. So whatever.
Well, the second most populous state for Ohio residents is South Carolina.
This is true.
I mean, they all move here.
Yeah.
The one thing I've noticed is that when Notre Dame tends to play some teams, so like they played Ohio State last year, now they play them this year. So ever since that game last year, and essentially this whole calendar year, I've heard more from Ohio State fans than I did the previous 10 years, because they just didn't play them.
Right.
So from a Notre Dame perspective, because they do tend to schedule just so many different teams, when they have a little bit of a couple year, run with a certain program, that tends to, kind of like when I mentioned with Clemson, we played you guys a lot over the last decade with the ACC affiliation and stuff like that. So, I've gotten to talk to a lot of Clemson fans that I didn't talk to with the previous decade prior to that. And I'm not saying it's been bad or good, just it's just been noticeable, I guess, from my perspective.
Very good. Well, we have one more question that we ask all of our guests, and especially, but you being such a young spring chicken, the answers should be very positive.
Sure.
Do you know how to do the gritty?
I do not.
Okay, so we're going to have to you come to the Clemson game. We're going to find some people to teach the three of us, which we're old, and I've had 2 back surgeries, but somebody's got to be able to grit.
I can't do it. My 16-year-old son, he tries. I can't do it. I'm not doing it.
No, I mean, I know what it looks like when someone does it. Like if someone's doing it, I can tell you what it is, but I couldn't do it myself.
All right.
We ask everybody that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
We had Ricky Sapp. He actually did the gritty for us on the show. So
yeah, he was pretty good at it.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that out of me, unfortunately.
Well, Nathan, we appreciate it. Guys, go out and find the Golden Homers. Find him on Twitter and follow these guys. And when they do, I'm sure they'll be putting more podcasts out. When football season comes around, they do a great job talking and you can tell he's smart football. He's not just talking trash. He talks smart football, him and his co-hosts both. So check them out. Nathan, we appreciate you being on the show.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Good luck the rest of baseball season.
Thank you.
Hey, that was cool,
Right, yeah,
man. Hey, we didn't mention he works for the Oakland A's AAA affiliate in Las Vegas, and he scouts for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I mean, he knows what he's talking about, and like I say, it's a good listen for real, just for any football fan, like we try to make our show to be. So we do appreciate him being on part of the all-day marathon from DaFanboys. So there's a example of what else the network has to offer. But speaking of tailgating, Bailey, it's getting close, okay? And I have a couple of interviews that have been pre-recorded, but we want to listen closely to what these people have to say about the tailgating and how important it is. I had the opportunity to interview the one and only Horrace Grant, and we talked to him specifically about going to Clemson games, but we want to check out this interview real quick as we prepare for Saturdays in the Valley.
Hey fans, you ain't gonna believe who we're about to have on here. We've been talking a lot, so we got to get it. Let me get my camera turned around, and we're gonna get it going on with former Clemson superstar, well, you're never a former NBA champion, are you? You're always the NBA champion.
Absolutely.
Horrace Grant here on live here at the Orange and White Week. How you doing, Horrace?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. We appreciate you being here. So tell us a little bit about Buck's event and why you're part supporting, why other folks should support this event.
Well, Buck asked me a couple years ago to come out and help him, with this great event, but my schedule wouldn't let me. But this year he called me. He was like, would your schedule allow you? And I said, absolutely. So I'm out here for a great cause to give back to this community. Everyone should come out and support.
Right. And I listen, I told Horrace before we started I'm amateur, and his face is right in the arm of the camera. So we're going to have to fix that.
There we go.
We're do something different.
All right.
So come on out. You can donate on the links on the screen. So tell the listeners a little bit about it. Everybody knows, what it was like being on the court, being a player at Clemson. How did you end up at Clemson?
Well, I was going to Anderson Junior College at the time. I think it's Anderson University now. And Coach Bill Foster came behind closed doors and said, Harvey and Horrace, would you guys like to come to Clemson? We were like, absolutely. And ended up here.
The rest is history.
Absolutely. I mean, great coach, great atmosphere, great fans, and such a great community here at Clemson.
Family atmosphere. So when you were here as a player of basketball, see, this is a Fun Fans podcast. We asked the athletes, were they fans, and how was it like attending the other sports? Did you go to football games, that type of thing?
Listen, as a basketball player here from 83 to 87, you did not miss football games. First of all, you didn't miss the tailgating. And then in the football game, we always had great football teams back in here. When Danny Ford was coaching, of course, now one of the greatest teams that ever played the game in Clemson football. So you didn't miss football games.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's if there's a correct answer. Exactly. We know exactly. That's the part we get to participate in. We appreciate you guys out there putting on the show. Normally. All right, so you heard it from the horse's mouth. What did he say, Bailey?
He said you had to go to the football games.
You do not miss the football games. If you're in Clemson, and you got to be there, and it's all about the tailgating. So from Horrace Grant himself, you heard it, 3-time NBA champion. I like how when I was introducing him, I mean, you're never a former champion. I mean, that's the thing about
the great Horrace and his brother Harvey, twin brothers, came to Clemson. I didn't know that backstory, how it ended up happening, but I used to get a press guide every year, and I would read that thing inside and out. I'm probably the only kid in America that read the Clemson press guide for basketball inside and out, but it's pretty cool seeing him right here on our podcast. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we have another interview with the mayor of Clemson. We talked to him about what it's like to be the mayor of Clemson and also going to Clemson football games.
Yeah, do it that way.
Oh, look.
That goes better on the. Yeah, that's my account.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Hey, Fun fans and Clemson fans. We're here with Clemson Mayor Robert. I'm just going to stick with Robert.
You're fine. You can say Half Acre.
Half Acre. I'm not, because I never claimed to be a professional at this. But found him here at Wayne Buckingham's Orange and White Weekend fundraiser. So what makes you want to support this type of event so we can tell the folks maybe out there that help support as well?
No, that's great. No, I was here last year as well. It's just a great event, bringing different athletes, families back into Clemson. We love it. Also, ultimately, what Wayne does for the nonprofits in the area, we love that as well. It's just great to have gatherings like that. So I appreciate his team and what they've done for this community and what they continue to do. So it's becoming a reoccurring event, so we love it.
Very good. So how long have you been the mayor of Clemson?
Been the mayor of Clemson for about 2.5 years.
How's that going so far?
I was actually mayor during COVID. That gives you any indication. So we've seen a lot of challenges. We always see challenges. All communities have seen challenges, of course, for years. But I feel like we've done pretty well getting through it. Thankfully, the community is very engaged. I'm going to say that in a good way. That's a lot of guidance. We all work together to do what's right for the city. If you get a chance, check out our website. We just actually we're starting to tell our story a little bit better. And say, not to say what we've done well in the past, but we're trying to just advocate the story. I would say necessarily the history of the story of Clemson, right? And what we've become as a community, and obviously the partnership with the university.
So when I know the mayor is probably across the state together, maybe across the country. Being the mayor of a college town, how would you learn that differs? And so maybe what you're doing is something to have the city stand out as well as the university.
So ironically, I was literally had lunch with the mayor of Oliver today. So there, did you tee that up perfectly? Yeah. So it's like, no, I literally had lunch with my son, and my son and I had lunch with the mayor of Oliver. We just shared best practices. Let's work well in the city of Oliver. What I felt like, what I should say me, I mean, is we feel like we're working well within the city of Clemson. We share the challenges as well. And a lot of people know if you've been to the Oliver campus, it's very similar to Clemson campus. People say Oliver's very similar to Clemson without the lake. So with that said, we do get a chance. And it's great value to have those conversations.
Being the Fun Fans podcast, we always ask folks, what's game day like for you? So as the mayor of Clemson, this might be the most interesting.
No, it's not. It's not. It's the most boring game. I always go to every football game. I'm always there for every game. We've been going since the late 70s. My dad had started getting tickets literally in the late 70s at the same season. But because we live so close to campus, that's why I'm saying we're not the most excited. We literally stay at our house and have friends over, tailgate, but then we walk and take a couple tailgates on the way to the game. So I'm not going to say I'm the most exciting, but my wife and I enjoy our being around the house throughout the day, and then probably 2 or 3 hours before game time. We start progressing towards the state of the tailgates.
It's always fun to be in the environment. You always welcome
well
the
said.
Fun Fans tailgate.
No, all right, I appreciate that.
Mayor, I appreciate the interview.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that was what you're doing.
All right, so the mayor of Clemson and his game day, his typical game day. What? And any initial thoughts there, Bailey?
No, I mean, I'm sure it's probably low stress because he's not in charge of anything on game day. He can hang out at his house and walk to the game. Isn't that what he said?
That's what he said. So I'm thinking, I'm always trying to do it up, I guess. So, but I'm thinking the mayor of Clemson needs to step up his game. I mean, if it's game day and you're the mayor, and like you say, that might be the lowest stress day for him because the big event is something that he's not even in charge of. I'd have like some orange golf cart with mayor of Clemson on the side of it riding around.
Well, he might during election year. But most of the people in town that day can't vote.
This is correct. Yeah, that is true. So
he's just another fan. He's just another fan on game day.
Yeah, I'd be here's the key to the city. Oh, no, here's the key to he literally has the key to the city.
Right.
So anyway, I was just thinking I'd probably step it up a little bit, but I'm sure he has a great time. I wonder where his friends come from that come over to his house and I don't know, wherever in
Probably has a lot of friends now that he is the mayor of Clemson and lives right there and can walk to the stadium.
Yeah. Suddenly he has a huge tailgate. So,
right.
All right. Well, speaking of Clemson, what is going on campus? This week was a big week. The kids started class. Bailey, you remember class?
I do.
So we got some kids over there. I'm gonna keep saying we, even though mine have technically graduated. I got nephews and friends with kids over there. So did you talk to Katie? She go to class?
Yeah, she went to class. I bought some books this week. She came home yesterday and picked up some stuff, and she's back. She had to go back and I think cheer at either soccer or volleyball today. I can't remember.
Gotcha. Well, I'm having to check on my nephew. I talked to my brother Jason yesterday and asked about his son, and he said I ain't talked to him. So I'm gonna have to text my nephew and check on him and make sure he went to class, make sure he's doing all right, I guess. But kids, go to class and don't miss the first Friday parade as well. That's coming up. That's the Friday before the first home game, right?
Yes, that's the 8th.
All right, so don't miss that one. Anything else, speaking of cheer or Katie, or anything else from campus news, Bailey?
No, just ready to rock and roll here.
We're ready.
I'm going to 2 Clemson games in 5 days next week.
All right. Duke, you're going to Duke.
We are.
You riding up there Monday? You going early or anything?
Yeah, my first cousin actually lives in that area. We'll stay there Monday night.
So get some. We'll have some footage, folks, on the podcast. Remember, that week we're going to start a Wednesday podcast. So 2 days after Labor Day, it may be a very brief podcast, but we'll have some footage hopefully from the tailgating at Duke.
I will have a complete assessment of the Duke tailgate scene.
There you go.
We have a parking place in some parking lot over there. So anyway.
And the cheerleaders, of course, the Clemson cheerleaders is with his daughter, so that'll be awesome. And then so you're talking about, and then that'll be 4 days later. We'll be in Clemson for the first home game.
Correct.
Very good. So, and I have you talking about doing it up. I've got way weird plans for the tailgate. It's gonna be, we got the same spot. So fun fans, everybody's invited. Nathan, everybody we've already ever had on here before, anybody that listens. Come down Centennial Avenue, look for the Fun Fans banner hanging off of the tent, and you're welcome to stop by. So we normally talk about other sports going on, but, once college football season starts, there's really no other sports to me, but I know some folks are baseball. What else is going on in the wider world of sports?
Look, the Tour Championship had a rain delay, so they're on hole 13 right now, so there's nothing to report there. The O's are still in first place, but there are other sports. I told Whit the other day, do you realize that between September and October, we have now the baseball playoffs, college football, professional football, and in October, the Hornets start playing again.
Yeah. It's a great time of the year. I love all sports, but I obviously I don't keep up with most other sports other than Clemson football like you do with some stuff. But I love postseason anything. I like postseason, which I keep up with the Bruins in the wintertime. But
I'll be honest with you. If my team's not in it,
Well, see, I had to pick a team. But I can get into the postseason like baseball. I'm not big on baseball, but I enjoy watching the playoffs and the World Series because, those when the games matter.
You're going to have to pull for those this year.
I will definitely pull. I'm pulling. Without a doubt. I'm an O's fan for sure. All right. So speaking of the college football, though, and the games between now, we will come back Sunday. We're doing it Sunday and Wednesday, but the Wednesday's not until after Labor Day, so not this Wednesday. We got Thursday night, Utah versus Florida. Any other games stand out? You got that one should be fun to watch, in my opinion.
The two Carolinas play in Charlotte, don't they?
The Carolina Bowl in Charlotte, the Gamecocks versus. I think there's going to be a lot of points and a lot of yards, and I think the two quarterbacks are going to shoot it out. In my opinion, that's my prediction. It might be one of those whoever has the ball last wins the games. So that one should be fun to watch as well. LSU Florida State Sunday. Now that one, we will have our podcast before that one starts. So
we're going to find out how good LSU is and Florida State is pretty quick.
Yeah. That'll be a game where it's like Nathan was talking about playing Navy. You kind of get a measuring stick. It's live action, of course, for your team, and you can break it down and whatnot. I think the LSU Florida State it will be a good measuring stick for each team. The winner of that one is going to probably be a pretty good team.
Is that game at a neutral site, or is it actually at Florida State this year? Because I think you keep talking while I'm looking.
Is that not in Atlanta, like Peach? Not the Peach Bowl, obviously.
Chick-fil-A preseason, something.
Yeah, the Chick-fil-A Nugget kickoff thing, where Clemson went down there one year and got hammered by Alabama. That was a while back.
Yeah,
that was not fun. But I'm not sure, but that one will be awesome. Speaking of next Sunday, this 5:30 time slot, we're gonna stick with 5:30, Bailey.
Sure.
Now that we're on to the 5:30 thing, all right.
You're the general manager.
5:30 on Sundays, and the Wednesday night one probably be into the 7:30, 8 o'clock. We will announce that on all of our social media. So now that the season is so close, a couple of them, just make sure we got those announcements. 2 days after the Clemson Duke game, we're adding the Wednesday show. So we're going to start doing 2 shows a week throughout college football season. And remember, we're at Rubens for away games, and we're going to start getting video for the show of the tailgating, whether it's at Rubens or at the game. So if you come out to Rubens with us or come by the tailgate, you could end up being part of the show. You can be featured. So look for that. Just look for the Fun Fans banner, like I said, on Centennial Extension.
Or you could look for we'll be drinking Pepsi products, I guess, out of Diamond Etch products that we've received.
Yeah.
They've mastered a diamond laser engraving process, and they can put almost any design on items such as license plates, yard signs, tumblers, water bottles, and more. For a high-quality, for everlasting, custom-engraved product, check out Diamond Etch products at diamondetchproducts.com, and they are an officially licensed partner with Clemson University, so you can get your stuff. And if you need something, you email Jaylin, Jaylin, at diamondetchproducts.com.
Click through this stuff, and I'm like, that stuff is so cool, and it looks so sharp. You got to see it in real life. So just reach out to Jaylin or reach out to us, and we can hook you up with some products. So coming up next with the Fanboys at 6:15, so just a couple minutes away, is a Fresh Take. Find the Real Fresh channel or go to DaFanboys.com to find that. Brad Harvey is going to be wrapping this all up tonight, starting I think at 7 with his college sportscast show. Brad does a lot of stuff and does a good job. And once again, we appreciate Nathan joining us and looking forward to that Notre Dame. I'm looking forward to that weather. November weather could not come soon enough.
That was the best thing about playing in Ireland. It was 58 degrees at kickoff.
It's been way too hot around her recently. We're encouraging all the college students to go to class. That's step 1, kids.
Please do that.
And we're ready. We're really close now. The season is almost here. But thanks again for checking us out each and every week. Don't forget to click subscribe on our Fun Fans Podcast YouTube channel, as well as your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all social media and share. Please, links mentioned or archived shows can be found at DaFanboys.com. On behalf of the Fun Fans Podcast, Jay Thriller Entertainment, the Fanboys Fangirls Podcast Network, and Bailey Jackson.
Go Tigers.